Hello, everyone. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Welcome to this webinar. My name's Carl. I'm here on behalf of the TEFL org to talk about the teaching listening skills. If there's anyone out there, please do say hello in the comments and let me know where you are. I'm in Northern Ireland, and here I work as an online teacher. I work as a teacher trainer. I work as an examiner. And I've been lucky enough to have worked in TEFL for sort of approaching 20 years now. So I've lived in many places around the world. I've lived in Japan, China, Vietnam, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Sri Lanka, Iraq, if I said that as well. I can't remember if I said that. And just before COVID, I was working a lot in Spain and Italy before that part of my job went online. So I can see that there's some people tuning in. Hello, Songbird. Bridget, is it in Canada? Hello, Serena in Germany, Cristobal in Colombia, Carolyn in Colorado, Rain in Moscow. How you doing? Latifa in Brazil. Please do let me know where you are in the world, because we just like to know exactly where you are. Now, this is a live webinar on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So if you do have any questions about anything to do with teaching listening, please put them in the chat. Or even more than that, if you've got any sort of questions about teaching English as a foreign language, please put them in the chat. I will try and answer them live. Or if not, David, who's monitoring the chat today, will be able to maybe put a link in or answer it before I do. All the hellos are coming in. Oliver in Cambridge. I don't know how to pronounce that. Miss Olivia, sorry, in the French Alps. You just had a strange username. Connie in Malaysia, Annie in Bordeaux, Adia in New York City, Sarah in Portugal. I can't keep up with everyone. Hello, how are you doing? Right, okay, let me get this screen up, my presentation here. Let me see if I can do that. That would be the first thing that I need to get up on the screen. Let me see if, sorry, that would really help, wouldn't it, if I did that correctly? I do actually know how to use computers, I promise you. Right, teaching listening skills. Right, okay, so let's go into this a bit. So first thing that I want to talk about is why teach listening. So the four main skills of English are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And I think that listening is sometimes neglected in the classroom. Now, actually, there have been research out there. If you go into sort of Google Scholar and look at some research papers, or you go to your local library that has a load of TEFL books, you'll be able to find some research which talks about the amount of percentage we spend, not just in English or not just teaching, but just generally communicating. About 45% of our time communicating involves listening. So if you got to think, like, when we're speaking, we're also listening as well, but also just sometimes we are literally just listening. So listening is a massive part of our communication skills. 30% of our time is spent speaking. Apparently, I didn't make this research. This is someone with PhDs and that kind of thing. 16% is spent reading and 9% is spent writing. So what you got to think about, if you're going to be training people, students, to be good users of English, to be good users of any L2, of any language, you've got to spend a bit of time teaching listening, because it's a big part of communication. Now, the thing that I would say is this really shown in classrooms? If you think back to the times you've learned another language, so, it doesn't have to be, if you're not an English native speaker, I'm not talking just about that. I'm talking about people like myself who spent time learning German or learning French at school. Was actually 45% of the time in the classroom spent on listening? Probably not. I can remember spending a lot of time on reading and a lot of time on writing, but actually that's not real world situations that we need to do. So I really think, and there needs to be a lot more time spent teaching listening in the classroom. So what to teach? Now, if you are new to TEFL, if you come and do one of our courses, we will talk about the skills here at the TEFL org. You sign up for one of our 120-hour courses or one of our other courses. We talk about the sub skills. We talk about the skills of English. So basically, what's a sub skill? As I said, listening, reading, writing, speaking are the main skills. Sub skills is a different skill where we are listening, or a different skill when we're reading, or a different skill when we're writing. And I'll talk about this a bit now. So one of the things that we do naturally in our L1 is before we listen to something, or even as we are listening, we predict what we're going to hear next. We predict what we're going to hear before we listen. So, for example, if you're looking on a website, a news website, and you're sort of seeing headlines, or you're seeing the little play button next to a video, what are we doing? We're checking, we're reading the headlines, we're looking at the picture, and we're going to predict what we're going to listen to. As we're listening on a bit more, we might tune out a little bit because we know that what's coming up isn't that important to us. But then when we hear some keywords, we start listening again more carefully because we're predicting as we're listening. And we're also listening for gist, we're listening for context. So what that means is we're not listening to the whole thing in detail. We're just listening to a general understanding of the text, or that we're listening to the clip that we're listening to. We're listening to just a general idea of what we're listening to. We're listening to signposts. So this is something we're listening for words such as firstly, secondly, thirdly, or words such as because, causes, in addition, in conclusion, in summary, all this kind of thing we're listening to, because again, it's something where we can keep up with a story, or we can keep up with a lecture, or we can keep up with a talk we're listening to. And this again tunes in, it helps us move on what we're listening to. We're listening for detail sometimes. So we're listening for specific information, dates, names, this kind of thing. Then another type of sub skill that we would have would be exam listening skills. So this would be a type of skill where we're listening for specific exam questions, and we're actually reading along at the same time, because you have to read the question before we actually listen. So this again is the type of different sub skills that we would do in our L1, not just when we're learning another language, but this would be in our L1 or even in our L2 as well. And these are the kind of sub skills you might teach in the classroom. There are others out there. These 5 that I listed here are not the only ones. There are others out there. If you type into Google listening sub skills, you'll see lists of them. You'll see websites that people have made where people talk about them and also give you ideas for teaching. I'm going to go into that for a bit more now. So the final thing to say is you try and link these sub skills to real world situations. So when you are learning more about the subject of teaching listening, or in fact teaching any of the 4 main skills, don't just think that these are very separate things that we do in the classroom. What you're trying to do is get the students up to a level where they can use their L2 in the real world. So what you're actually wanting them to do is to think, okay, oh, teacher, why are we doing this predicting? And you said, well, okay, because we drop you in London, and you're looking at TV channels, and you don't know what thing to watch. So you look at the names of the titles, and you predict, okay, that might be interesting for me, that might not be interesting for me. This kind of thing, you're showing them that the actual skills that you're going to teach them are useful in the real world. So let's talk a bit about predicting. Right, so think yourself about what you choose to listen to. So that could be music, that could be news stories, it could be TED Talks, it could be anything like that. Yeah. How do you listen? How do you choose what you want to listen to? Because you don't listen to everything, do you? You just choose exactly what you want to on a website, or on your phone, or whatever it might be. Okay. And the way you choose is kind of how you're going to want to explain it in the classroom. You're going to say, okay, right, how do you in your L1 choose? And they will say things like, oh, we look at the pictures, or we look at the text, or we look at the headlines, we look at the titles, this kind of thing. You say, right, great. And think about how you do it in your L1, because this is a similar thing that we're going to use now at L2. So a very simple way of getting students to predict and to learn how to predict is you found your listening clip. You don't play it straight away as soon as you walk into the classroom. What you might do is find a picture that comes up on that comes alongside the clip you found, and you just show the picture up on a screen, or you print it out. And you say, right, okay, here's a picture. What do you think this listening will be about? They just predict what they can from the picture. They work in pairs. You say, okay, Carl, you paired up with David. You two talk to each other. What do you think your predictions might be? Oh, I think it will be a football one. Oh, yes, maybe football one. Football, yes. Maybe Spanish football. Yes, it might be Spanish football. Okay, great. And then you say, right, okay, tell me what it might be. What do you think will be in the clip? And they tell you. And then you would say things like, what words, what phrases do you expect to hear just from this? Just from before you listen, just from looking at this picture? Oh, I would expect to hear football, Messi, Ronaldo. Well, they're neither of them play in Spain anymore, do they? Win, lose, draw, this kind of thing. Great. Okay, so you're activating their schemata for the topic. You're also getting them to use their real world situation. You then play the clip. Were your predictions correct? Yes, teacher, my predictions were correct. I heard about Real Madrid winning. Oh, yes, I heard about Barcelona losing. That kind of thing. Fantastic. You are helping them to show that you would predict in your L1 and you predict in your L2. And this would be a useful skill to use in English. Okay, so that's just one example, predicting. Listening for gist, so listening for sort of the overall idea of something, not listening for particular detail, just listening to sort of the overall side of things. And this is when you try to understand overall what the clip is about, not listening for specific numbers, specific dates, that kind of thing. You're just trying to get a good general idea of the clip. So how do you do it in your L1? You would sort of hopefully do things like listen to the vocabulary, listen to the tone of the voice, listen to the formality of the voice. That helps you give an idea whether it's quite a serious talk. It would help you to give an idea of whether it's a happy talk or a sad talk or a conversation. It doesn't have to be a talk. The vocabulary, you listen to specific words to understand what the topic is about and what the information that they're going into. This is the kind of activity you might do in a classroom. So you would give students questions such as, what is the best summary of the text or the clip? What, you would give them a choice of 3 maybe, and you say, right, okay, read these 3 summaries. Now listen, what is the best summary? So they're not actually listening for specific details. What they're listening for is just a good overall picture of what the summary might be. You might even, if they're lower levels, you might ask a question such as, what is the topic? What is the, the overall, if you could just put it in 1 or 2 words, what they're talking about, what is it? Are the speakers happy? And then you say afterwards, ask the students why. What tells us this? Okay. And then you get this kind of information. They're listening for gist. They're not listening just for particular details. This is the sort of activity you could do the first time that you listen to something. So then other thing that we might do is listen for details. So gist is more overall. Details is when we're listening for specific information. And this is a more traditional listening type activity. It's a sort of traditional listening activity that a lot of students have in the classroom. They tend to have more of this type of activity than the overall listening for gist type activity. So they're listening for specific words. They're listening for specific numbers. I can't say specific today. They're listening for specific times. It could also be things like people, places. These are just some of the examples that I've said here. It always comes after a gist activity. So you give them some sort of overall gist activity where they're doing prediction, or they're listening for a summary, or they're listening for happiness, that kind of thing. But the detail one would always come second. So the first time you give them a gist activity, you then play the clip, they check that gist activity. Second time you listen, now we're listening for detail. And these type of questions are who, why, when, how many type questions. So who did this? When did this happen? How many people did it? You can say why, just you've got to be careful. It's got to be quite a short answer for why. You don't want them to write a big, long example. And these are the type of detail asking questions that you would give. But it also can be activities such as fill in the blanks. So you give them some sentences, and you would generally take these from the tape script of the clip that you're listening to, and you take them out. You maybe put in some synonyms, and they have to fill in the missing word. They have to fill in a blank. It can be true or false for listening. So you give them 5-10 sentences and you say to them, is this true? Is this false? Could be a matching task. So you could, for example, have some people, names of people down the side, some actions down the other side. They have to match who did what action. It could be dates and they have to match what happened with the date. Could be animals and they have to match what the descriptions are, that kind of thing. Yeah. And this can also often be used for a tape script. What is a tape script? A tape script is the written down word for word conversation, lecture, whatever it might be, of what they're listening to. So they listen to it and answer these questions. Then you say to them, right, okay, check your answers by looking in the tape script. Okay, yes, this is true because I can see on line 3. So that tends to be what happens with details. Some people don't do the tape script activity. That's absolutely fine. Some people do. Very common in textbooks to have a tape script at the end of the listening clip that the students actually listen to. Now I can see all your questions. Tracy, I'm going to get to your question very soon. Miss Vibibi, I can't even say your name at all. Miss Liv, I'm going to call you Miss Liv. Yes, going to come to yours in a second as well. Inang, Melango, I can see your questions. The earlier you get your questions in, the sooner I'll get to actually answer them. Right, so listening for signpost or signal languages. This might be another type of activity that you might do. So this is often aimed at higher levels where I'm sort of talking B1. B1 is seen as intermediate level. If you're not sure what these numbers mean, go and Google after you've listened to my talk, CEFR language levels. These are very, very common in Europe and increasingly across the world, how you describe levels of a language. So these type of activities are aimed for B1 and higher. It's also very important for English for academic purposes. So if you're going to go and teach at universities around the world, or if you're going to go teach at universities in the UK or Australia or America, for example, these are the sort of activities that you might do in a listening class. So what might you do? You might listen to a talk. So it tends to be a lecture. It doesn't have to be. It could be a conversation between two people talking about a subject. It tends to be a little bit formal. Not always, because it can be just a story, but tends to be a little bit formal. You listen to a talk and you get the students to say, right, okay, as you're listening, note down some phrases to show movement of the topic. So they're looking for words such as phrases such as, for example, moving on to, firstly, in conclusion. This is where the speaker moves on slightly about the topic that they're talking to by adding more information or by showing a cause, showing an effect, this kind of thing. And you get them just to write down these phrases as they listen. And it might be a 3 or 4 minute clip, but they try and find maybe 3 or 4 examples of this. And then students then can rearrange them. That's another thing you can do. You could say to students, okay, right, you found these 4. Here's another sort of 10 examples. And you've put them in lots of different order. And, you know, you'd have the simple ones like firstly, secondly, thirdly. But you'd also have things like to introduce, to conclude, adding on to the second point, something like this. You might get them to arrange them together in pairs. And then that's something that they would have listen to, and then you might play another clip where they do a listen activity with these ones in them. They then can use them in their own presentations. Moves it on to speaking. Now, exam listening. This is something where there's a lot of classes, a lot of work, involved around the world. Lots of students around the world are taking exam classes in things like Trinity, in terms of IELTS, Cambridge, this kind of thing. And you might be employed by a school around the world to actually to go and teach specific exam classes. And these often include a range of exam questions based on the sub-skills. So they would generally, what happens, not always, because each exam is slightly different, but generally what happens is they take an exam in reading, an exam in listening, an exam in speaking, and an exam in writing. And the reading paper and the listening paper and the speaking paper and the writing paper wouldn't just have one type of question. It would have some gist questions. It would have some detail questions. It might have some prediction questions. It might have some signposting questions, this kind of thing. So they might teach you would have to go in there and not just teach general listening. You would teach specific exam question sub-skills. And a big part of this is teaching question and exam technique. So if you've got, you give them lots of examples of this, and you say, right, okay, this is a detailed question. You need to listen to a specific detail. And look, the question is who. So you're listening out for people, or the question is when. You're listening out for dates, this kind of thing. And you would do lots of work on what words within a question to underline. So you would say, okay, you need to underline the key W word or the key H word, the question word, how long, who, why. Then you've got to underline the noun, because that's what we're doing. You've got to underline the verb if that's important. Techniques like this. Could also predict missing words. This is the kind of thing that happens in exams. They give a listening text, the students listen to a listening clip, and the exam question has missing words in a sentence or missing words in a question, and they have to listen and write in a missing word. But part of that would be predicting what the missing word would be. Predicting, is it a noun? Is it a plural noun? Is it a big number? Is it a small number? Is there an adjective involved? This kind of thing. If you can predict those in the question, you're halfway there for when you're listening. Also, what to do if you don't know the answer. So do you just leave it a blank, or can you just sort of guess? Well, I think it's a noun. Right, I'll just put in any old noun there, because you don't want to leave any blank spaces on a exam paper. And then finally, spelling. This is a big part of exam techniques, because if the student has a word that looks almost perfect but is spelt wrong, they don't get the mark. They've heard it, they've done the job, they've heard it correctly, but they've written down it wrong with bad spelling. They don't get the word, they don't get the mark. Or some exams do allow that, they give a little bit of leeway. So, whatever, you've also got to teach a bit of spelling as well in terms of listening classes. So here is a simple listening lesson. Put a picture up. So you put a picture up on the screen, or you put a picture up on the printout, something like that. Or you have a textbook and you get them to look at a picture on page 12, whatever it might be. You put a picture up. You say, what do you think is happening? Tell your partner. Oh, I think this is happening. Yes, I think this is happening. No, I don't think this is. I think this is happening. Oh, yes, actually, you're correct. You get them to talk about that. What do you think is happening? Then you might say, okay, right, you're going to listen to it in a minute and you'll see whether you're correct. Before we listen, here are some key vocabulary. Right, here is a list of words. See if you can match it with the definition. Work with your partners. Can you use a dictionary to try and help you? Something like that. You might do some pre-teaching of vocabulary. This doesn't have to happen, but it quite often does happen. You then put the title of the talk up. You sort of say, right, okay, here's the title again. Can you match it? Does this link up with the picture that you've put up? Or from the title, can that give you more information of what's going to happen? Again, they're sort of predicting this kind of thing. You could say to your partners, right, okay, what do you expect to hear? Oh, I expect to hear these words. Yes, I expect to hear food words, animal words, sports words, education words, this kind of thing. Great. Okay. Predicting. So you can see there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stages here. We haven't even started listening to the text yet, listening to the clip yet. So these are the kind of things that you do before you listen. You never just go straight in and say, right, here is a listening, answer these questions. Always do something beforehand. Then you would do some sort of gist question and you play the track. So it could be a gist question, could be as simple as, okay, were your predictions correct? Did you hear the words that you thought you would hear? Did you get the prediction correct of what you thought was going to be in there and what might happen? Could be as simple as that. Or you could give them another gist question. We say, okay, is this a happy talk? Is this a sad talk? Is it a formal talk? Where are the speakers? Things like this. Then you play it again and you do some sort of detailed questions. So this tends to be more than one. So you could sort of do, the who, what, where, why, how questions in that one. And then you do some sort of speaking or writing activity on top of that. So, it could be simple like, right, okay, write a letter to the person who is speaking, or write the next part of the story. Or speaking, it could be, right, okay, with your partner, you've now got 5-10 minutes to plan. Then you're going to come up on the front of the class stage, almost at the stage. You're going to come to the front of the class, and then you're going to carry on the conversation. Something like that. There's lots of different speaking. Yeah. Right. That's it. Thank you very much for tuning into that one. I'm now going to get to some of your questions. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. Milano, thank you. What is the best approach to apply for teaching online? Is it good to enroll with a company to find you teaching online? So, yeah, what I would recommend if you're looking to get into TEFL and teaching English as a foreign language online, I would, first of all, obviously you need your certificate. As long as you've got your TEFL certificate, you're good to go with most companies. Some companies do expect degrees, this kind of thing. But if you're got your TEFL certificate, that generally tends to be good enough for a lot of companies out there. Now, so then you've got two options. You could set yourself up independently, and there's a couple of ways of doing that. You could sort of build your own website, find your own students, charge your own money, that kind of thing. Or you could sort of go down the website where you're independent, but you're working for a company. So you make yourself a profile up on a website, and they students look and they choose the one that they like, the one that fits for them best. So that's sort of doing it more independently. The other way is to go and work for a specific company. So for example, you go on our website, TEFL.org, you go to the job center at the top, you'll see some jobs advertised for teaching online. You click on one, you apply for it, you do all the steps. And I've done webinars where I talk about the application process, and then they find you work. And that can be quite good in terms of having a bit of stability, because, tends to be quite regular work. They'll sort out everything. You don't need to chase students for payment, this kind of thing. You'll quite often get materials provided, and that's a very good way to get you started. However, long term, it's probably best to be trying to find your own students, because that's the best way to get a bit of money coming in. Hope that answered your question, Milano. Hello, Anang. How can one apply for jobs? Right. So first of all, you've got to get your TEFL certificate. So if you go on our website, TEFL.org, you can see some courses up there. You click on that, you can enroll. You pay the money, instant access. You get a tutor, that kind of thing, and we teach you how to be a TEFL teacher. If you've done that already, the next thing to do is just to go onto a job center website. So as I said, we've got ours, TEFL.org. We've got jobs at the top there somewhere, but that's not just the only company that you can apply for with one of our certificates. You could go to a company, you go look at websites such as eslcafe.com. If you go on that website, there's lots and lots of jobs listed. You see, okay, right, I like the look of that job, you apply. Could be abroad, could be online, could be in your own country. TEFL.com, which is different from us here at TEFL.org. You got TEFL.com, and again, same thing. Now, each company would have a slightly different way of applying, but generally the same sort of thing happens. And again, I've done webinars where I talk about that application process. Good luck, Mr. Enang. Tracy, hi. Can I recommend companies or online resources for TEFL teaching material, especially business English? Right. So we have some resources on our website, first of all, Tracy. So have a look on our website and see if that works out. The next one that I think is a fantastic one is onestopenglish.com. I think they have really, really good resources on that. So have a look on that, onestopenglish.com. Some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for. I think there's one called Off2Class, OFF2Class, I think. That might help you. We've also got a resources page. If you go onto our website, we've got a blog section, so TEFL.org, and there's a blog bit. click on that, and you can type into their resources, and something like that will come up, and they'll have a long list of resources, that kind of thing. Other final one is British Council have some. So if you go to, I don't know what their website's called. Is it learnenglish.com? But if you type into Google British Council resources, that kind of thing. Now, unfortunately, Tracy, probably the best ones are the ones you've made yourself. Okay. Because that tends to be the ones that you're most likely to know how to do and to teach. There are also obviously textbooks out there, but they can be a bit expensive. It depends where you live in the world, Tracy. I hope that helped you there. Milano, in Prague? What happens in Prague stays in Prague. Do I recommend working in Prague? Is it safe? I've never been to Prague. Sorry. So I don't know anything really about Prague. However, I know that most people think it's a fantastic place, and I think it's just as safe as anywhere. I think one of the questions that people have is about safety. Rightly so. Of course, people want to be safe. What I would say is that most people I know around the world who've TEFL are generally quite safe. I've never been a victim of crime anywhere around the world apart from in London, to be honest. And that was another story, but I've had more bad stuff happen to me in London than anywhere else in the world. It does depend, safety. All parts of the world have, I'm sure wherever you are in the world, Milano, there's some parts of the city that you wouldn't go to late at night. There's probably some parts of Prague you wouldn't go to late at night. So generally, places are safe as long as you use your common sense. That's what I think, Milano. I mean, obviously you don't go, teaching in a war zone, although some people do that. But I think just generally, I think you just use your common sense. Yeah. Bjorn, hi Bjorn. You look very happy in your photo, Bjorn. Bjorn, would I recommend using a listening task when teaching a large class? Yeah, for sure. I do listening with any sort of size. Yeah, one-on-ones all the way up to large classes. Yeah, there's no reason that something's large doesn't mean it can't happen. I've taught classes in China of sort of 200, 300 students at a time. I've done listening in that. Now, you can't get around all of them and you can't check all their work. It's too big, generally. It depends what your definition of large is. Beyond, like, it could be 20. 20 is not actually that large. 60, 80, quite large. So, yeah, but I would definitely do listen tasks with all of them. Yeah, listening is an important part. And I often find that students, when they come to take a IELTS or a Trinity or a Cambridge test, they've neglected listening because they've concentrated so much on writing and so much on speaking that when they actually get to the listening part of a test, they really struggle. See it quite often. They get high marks for reading, high marks for speaking, low marks for listening. So do not neglect it. Okay. Milano, sorry, Salhi, yes. How do you get a certificate with us? Right, so first thing you need to do is go on our website, tefl.org. Let me just show my ability to not talk whilst doing something. Let me just show you our website, okay? So this is our website here, tefl.org, okay? And you see here, there's lovely pictures and all that kind of thing. The bit that you want to know, Salhi, is at the top here, TEFL courses. Click on this. Now you can look at all this bit if you know exactly what you want to get into. But if you click on the TEFL courses here and you scroll down, it's got information here. And then the one that you really want to look out for is the 120-hour course. This one here, it's on sale at the moment. So good time to be doing it. And that is the basic number that employers look for. They look for candidates, applicants who have done a 120-hour TEFL course. So you click on that one there. There's loads more information there, gives you more details, tells you lots of things about it. There's a little video you can watch, find that information and see if you think that's for you. So now, what I would say is you will find TEFL courses out there cheaper. You will. I say this, fair enough. I think it's fair enough. But, and I will say this as someone who's recruited teachers in the past, the quality of the TEFL certificate you get is important. What you are looking for is to find out about something called accreditation. Yeah, you want to know that the company that you're working for is a good quality company that has been checked by external companies that are nothing to do with them. Ours are. So they come and check people like me when I do the training courses in Northern Ireland. They check the materials, all that kind of thing. You can also find more information about that at the bottom. So have a look. Don't rush into anything, Sally, but I do think ours are good. And then there are other options as well you could do, like sort of extra add-ons about teaching online. You could do extra add-ons about practical weekends where you get to spend the weekend with me. You can do extra add-ons if you know you're going to be teaching kids, this kind of thing. All right. So that might be something that you might want to have a look at. Okay. Thanks, Sally. Good question. Milana, the Oxford test, right? So there is an Oxford test of English. I think it's called the OTE test. Is the shortcut. I don't know much about it. I don't get many students asking for help with it, to be honest. It's not something that I advertise myself as an expert in. I think you can do it online, which I think is a good thing. I think it can be a bit cheaper than an IELTS or a Trinity test, but is the quality as good as there as much? I don't really know much about it, if you probably can guess from what I'm saying, Milano. So I don't really want to say it's good. I don't really want to say it's bad because I don't know enough to make a conclusion. Marina, how would I evidence this activity is correct for the level you're teaching? All right. So how do I get the level correct for who it is? Right. Really, really difficult is the first thing. Right. What you need to do is, if you haven't got a textbook, the easiest way to do it is to take your listenings, take your readings from a textbook, because someone with a PhD who's spent lots of time writing that textbook knows that this is an intermediate text, this is an upper intermediate, this is an advanced, this is a pre-intermediate text. Right. So that's fine. There's also books that are aimed at 5, 6, 7-year-olds. There's books that are aimed at 9, 10, 11-year-olds, books that are aimed at 13-year-olds, 16-year-olds. Yeah. So if you can get your hands on a textbook, that's the best thing. The next thing to sort of think about is, in terms of the age ranges, sort of think about the topics for people in your own country, Marina. So, you know, what would a 5-year-old in, let's say you're in Spain, watch? They'd watch cartoons, they'd watch kids programs. Fine. Okay. Could you get some of those up for 5-year-olds? What would 16-year-olds watch? I don't know what 16-year-olds watch. Probably YouTube videos. You know, what sort of YouTube videos would be popular? Could you play some of those? So that's the first thing to think about. Now, in terms of the level, that's when it becomes more complicated, especially for listening. And there's certain things you can control. And the first thing you can control is the length of the listening. If they're low levels, they can't listen for very long. If they're high levels, they can listen for a bit longer. So that's the first thing you can control. The second thing you control, and it's something that I have done myself, but it takes time, is you make your own listenings that you think they would know. So you get either two people that you trust to record it, or you would do it yourself with someone else. Okay. So that's another thing you can do. Right. Lastly, just Google and other search engines are your friend, basically. Type in intermediate teenage listening activities. You'd be surprised how many websites you can find there. Right. But it is difficult with listening to do that. The old question, Julie Delmar, La Vie de Julie blog uniqueness. What a name. What's the difference between TEFL and TESOL? Right. So you've got teaching English as a foreign language, and tends to be, so I count myself as a TEFL teacher. Sometimes I'm a TESOL teacher. Now, take away the T, English as a second or other language. So here in Northern Ireland, there are lots at the moment, Ukrainian refugees. There are lots of refugees from Middle Eastern countries, from Arabic countries, and they have come over here as refugees, and they want to learn English in order to survive in Northern Ireland. And this happens in America, this happens in Canada, this happens in Australia, Ireland, other English-speaking countries. And These people are ESOL students. It's just a very specific type of English. So you would sort of teach them survive ESOL. If you're a TESOL teacher, you would teach them survival English, like how to buy a bus ticket, how to apply for jobs, how to apply at local benefits offices, that kind of thing. Whereas TEFL tends to be a bit broader. You could do sort of general English, business English, academic English within it. That's the difference, basically, Julie. Hope that answered your question. If it hasn't, please put it in the chat. Annie, is it possible to have a little bit more info on what to tell students if they don't know the answer in an exam? Yeah, okay. So, right. Now, one of the hardest things for students to get into their heads is that unless they are aiming to become a TEFL teacher, okay, if that's their ultimate goal, then they need to sort of get almost 100% of the answers correct on an exam. Now, if they are aiming, let's say they're doing IELTS, okay, and their aim to get their visa or to get their university place is to get IELTS 6. Yeah. Now, to do that, they don't need to get 100% of the questions correct. Now, within an exam, you're going to have some harder questions for the people to get the highest marks. You're going to have some easy questions to get the people in the low levels going, that kind of thing. What you've got to say to them, Annie, first of all, is if you're listening, student, and you don't get the answer quickly, move on, because that's probably one of the more difficult questions aimed at the people who are trying to get IELTS 8, IELTS 9. Secondly, if you really feel like you've got to put something in there, and what happens in a lot of exams is they do the listening and then they have sort of 5-10 minutes to check their answers. If they've got a blank space, you've got to use your grammatical knowledge to decide, is there any sort of marker that says it's a plural noun? So there you're looking for an, some, many, this kind of thing. Is there any sort of clue to show that you need to have an adjective? So, it could be sort of, you can see a noun further on. So you're looking for the word before the noun is quite often an adjective, right? You've got to put that in, that kind of thing. Using your grammar, is anything to show that it's a past tense verb they need to write in, that kind of thing. And then they just write that in to have a guess. Yeah. Or the other thing as well is to think of the sort of general topic. If it's about sport and you know that they're listening to something about tennis, Roger Federer, something like that. Okay. They're just guessing. But the most important thing for you as an exam teacher to get into their head is that actually they don't need to get 100% of the answers correct. Yeah. Thank you for everybody that's saying thank you. Thank you. That's very nice. We've got about 10 minutes left. Thomas, thank you for the presentation. No problem. You're very polite, Thomas. I like that. Are there any good sites to volunteer to teach online to gain more experience exposure? Yep. So my favorite one is RefuNet. Or refu.net. If you type into Google refu.net, that kind of thing helps. Now, the other thing that you might want to think, it doesn't always have to be online, Thomas. You could do probably wherever you are in the world, there are people locally around you that want to learn English and they don't have much money. And quite often they're linked to churches, mosques, local community colleges, that kind of thing, local government organizations, and they you could actually go and work face to face. Now, you don't have to be religious, and quite often the students aren't religious. It's just that the churches and the mosques know about them, so they have found the students, and they offer free classes. So that might be something that you want to think about if you don't want to do it online. But if not, type into Google refu.net and you'll get the actual answer there. Okay. Good luck, Tom. Sorry, throat's going a bit there. I like that, Milana. You've started a little topic going here. How do you recommend teachers pivot for teaching online from in classroom? Right. So the structure of lessons is the same. The theory behind learning languages is the same. How you deliver the classes is different. So, before you'd have a handout, now you share a screen. Before you would play, you would get them to look in a textbook. Now that you might put it into a shared document. It's just the techniques are different. And if this is something that you really want to know more about, You could do one of our modules. So if you go on our website, tefl.org, click on the TEFL course at the top, you'll see a special module to teach online. So this is an add-on to the 120-hour TEFL course. That gives you more information. But really, joke is on Ray. Sorry, shouldn't call you joke. That would be pretty bad. The theory is the same. Don't think it's wildly different. A lot of it comes down to just how you deliver the classes. Yeah. And the type of students you're going to have. Little new things. We've got loads of cool names today. You've done your diploma in business English. Now you want to take a course of young learners. What do I suggest for that? Go on our website, TEFL courses. We've got young learners. Now, most of the jobs, I think roughly around 60% of the jobs you'll see advertised involve teaching kids. So it'll be young learners classes. It's a big business teaching young learners. So if you can set yourself up as a young learner teacher, you're never going to be without work. So I think it's a good one. I always sort of say to people, if you just want to make some money, not megabucks, but if you just want to get up and running as soon as you can, then go do your young learners module. Okay. Look at all these questions coming in. That's lovely. Robin, can you be a TEFL teacher if English is your second language? Yep, for sure. We do. We welcome non-native speakers. I've done webinars talking about how to become a teacher if you're a non-native speaker. I hate the phrase non-native speaker because basically we're all good or bad users of English. And I take that as people whose English is their first language as well. Yes, there are jobs out there. There are online jobs for you for sure, Robin. Go back and look at our website. Sorry, go look at where are you on YouTube? Yep, look for the videos. You'll find one of me saying teach as a non-native speaker. Okay. Coming to the end now. T1 and L1 and L2, I think you're talking about. Is it? Did I mention T1 and T2 or L1 and L2? L1 is your first language, so the language that you grew up speaking. L2 is the second language you learn, and some people have L3 or some people have L4. Okay. You know, some people go all the way up to sort of L10, you know, geniuses like that. But L1 is the language that you grew up speaking. In my case, English, could be Portuguese, could be Spanish, wherever it might be. And L2 will be the language that you're learning, basically. And most of the students you teach, their L2 will be English, most of, but not all, because some, you know, I know some, I've had some students in Africa where English is actually their L5 that they have. Okay. There we go. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that webinar. Please do put in the chat if you did enjoy it. Please also put in the chat if you didn't enjoy it, because we learn as much from our bad feedback as we do from our good feedback. I've done lots and lots of webinars on lots and lots of different topics. So please go back and look for them. You know, give us a like and a thumbs up and all that kind of thing as well, because, you know, who doesn't like to be liked? Thank you very much, everybody. You also, sorry, I should also say, if you want more information, go on our website, tefl.org. There's a contact chat with us function. We also have a podcast out there. If you go onto your podcast provider and you type in TEFL.org, you'll be able to find interviews with people that have taught around the world. We've also done loads and loads of classes. Loads of videos and loads of different topics. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.